So my name is Brian Reeves. I've been in the hotel space for a little over 20 years with various software companies, mostly around the digital marketing and online reservation space. And I think to summarize my passion and the theme of the work that I've done, it's been really around a dual focus on trying to get brand.com to perform better. So hotel's website, how can we get the hotel website to perform with the kind of conversion rates that we would expect to see in retail? And the second aspect, which is kind of linked, is how do we get away from the over-dependence on online travel agents? So we've seen over those 20 years, we've seen Booking.com, especially in Europe, just go from strength to strength. And we're probably now at a point where there's very little that we can do about it. Over the last few years, I realized that there's a common thread to explain the underperformance of brand.com and the dominance of the OTAs. And it's all around hotel pricing. And what I want to talk to you this morning about is price marketing. So we understand, all of us who are hoteliers at least understand how we manage a price model within the hotel to respond to demand. But what I want to do is I want to look instead, I'm not advocating that we change any of it, but I want to look instead at the problems that that model causes us in marketing, especially when it comes to consumer confidence and OTAs. So we understand dynamic pricing. The way it works is we're basically trying to respond to forecasted demand by tweaking rates and trying to get this balance of achieved rate and occupancy, so we optimize our RevPAR. And again, I don't advocate that we change any of that. I think that model is exactly the way it should be. And it's getting, as revenue management systems embrace machine learning and AI technologies, the algorithms that underlie the recommendations made by our RMS systems are becoming all the better. But I want to look at that pricing model from a marketing perspective and show you some of the issues with it. So 101 marketing, we learned that the marketing mix has 4 different components. And this is almost universal. This is right across the board. As a marketeer, we're looking at our product, how we price it, where it is we're going to sell that product, and what kind of promotions we're going to run with it. However, when we look at this from a hotel perspective, we don't have control over price. So price, within a hotel environment, price is owned by revenue management. And again, I'm not advocating for change. I think it should lie with revenue management. But it causes a lot of issues from a marketing perspective when we don't have control over price. And the first one I want to look at is the conversion rate on hotel websites. So I want you to just put yourself in the role of a consumer for a second. You're browsing hotels, you find a hotel that you like, you put in your dates, you're in the booking process, and you're presented with a room that looks really nice and the price. The first issue that we have around that price that causes low conversion rates is that there is no intuitive price expectation. Consumers have no idea what that price was likely to be before they started searching. So the hotel product is something that we don't have a sense of where it's going to be priced. And that's a problem. And it means that we go into the process of booking hotels low on confidence. And the more we've been able to map for years confidence to intent to buy or intent to book. So we have a customer at the start of this process, when they're considering rooms, that are just low on confidence. There's nothing about that price that they think that's what I expected it to be. The second problem is that, unlike retail, we don't have any way to say to that consumer that this is a fair price. That price for that night, that's a good price. Now, this point has been studied for years. If you go right back to the 1970s, a guy called Daniel Kahneman studied consumer decision making, and he won a Nobel Prize in economics for discovering a few different things, but at the center of it was a thing called riskless choice. I don't want to feel I'm taking a risk with this. I want to feel confident that this price is what it should be. So again, in retail, you'll see recommended retail price, or you'll see something has a list price, or a manufacturer's recommended price. So when I see the price point on the day alongside that, it gives me confidence that it's priced in and around where it should be. So I'm not taking that risk of overpaying for something. We don't have a way to indicate that with hotels. The second point linked to that is we don't have a way to signal when our rates are reduced. So a revenue manager can drop the rates for a certain night by 20%, but there is no way to flag that. So I come along as a consumer, I have no idea what this price was likely to be. There's no way for you to tell me it's fair or that it has just been reduced. So there is no structure from understanding value for money. There's no structure around the way we price. So you end up with a consumer who's just indecisive. You have absolutely zero confidence to book this room and say, that's good value, or that was a deal. The mechanisms just don't exist. And you can browse all the websites online and jump around, and consumers do. When we look at consumer behavior when it comes to booking hotel rooms, people might start on brand.com and then go to OTAs, then they'll go to TripAdvisor for reviews, they'll come back to Google, they'll search for something else. And in the back of their mind, they're trying to get this fixed. Is this a good deal? Is this what I should book? And there is simply no way to answer it. There is no website that exists. We have meta search, which is arguably the only innovation we've seen in the last 10 years. But all meta search does is once I've chosen a hotel, it will tell me the cheapest channel to book it on. It doesn't answer the value for money question. Comes to that. So the final point is that if we can't, at the bottom of the funnel, so I'm at the end of the booking process, I'm about to book this room, if we can't indicate value here, we certainly can't advertise value the way retailers do to get more people into the funnel and to come to our hotel websites in the first instance. So to just contrast for a second, if I'm a marketing person within a retail organization, and we decide we're going to reduce the price of something by, let's say, 20%, a number of things are going to happen. The first thing is I'm going to march onto the shop floor, I'm going to get a sticker, and I'm going to say, it was £100, it's now 80, so it's a strike through on the 100, it's 20% off, it's a sale, or it's a discount. And then I'll go and get a poster and put it on the shop window, so anyone walking along the high street can see that there's 20% off sale in store. And then I'll go to all of my digital media, all of my advertising, and I'll update all those ads to say, we've got 20% off in store at the moment. So I won't just introduce incrementality on sales in store. I'm going to bring a lot more people into store. And I'm going to push it out to people on email marketing campaigns, push it out on those social channels that work well on push. Conversely, I come in as a revenue manager and look at a group cancellation for a future date and decide to drop my price by 20% also. There is nothing I can do. There is no price marketing opportunity for hotels because we're dynamically pricing. So what's happening is behind the scenes, retailers are allowed to do this because we have been able to put the structure and the regulation around, and a set of rules around retail pricing, which means that the consumer, number one, is protected, but the retailers can use those rules, stay within the rules, and then they can use price marketing. But because with dynamic pricing of hotels, the price is moving all the time, I don't have that anchor point. You know, retailers have to have an item on sale for 28 days at this price before they can say it was a discount. Hotel rates are just moving all the time. So the mechanism doesn't exist. We haven't been able to regulate it. And as a result, we have a huge problem with conversion rates on websites. So the equivalent, if I was looking at that room, the equivalent of that retail sticker would be something like a trusted brand like Trustpilot saying, this room should be £339, but it's only £269, so you're saving £70. Can you imagine what that would do for incremental bookings on the night that that customer is looking at? And all we're really doing is we're saying, okay, but it genuinely was $339. We've just reduced it. There's £70 off this rate because, you know, we're behind the curve on occupancy, so we've reduced our rates. We just don't have the mechanisms to do it. So the question that I want to pose, I guess, and the thing I'd love you to challenge is we've built over the last few years a new pricing standard for hotels. We have found a way, algorithmically, to look at the sea of hotel rates. If I look at a market like London, and there's thousands of rates in the market, we've found a way to look at those rates alongside what they should be. And I'll explain how that works in a second. But what we have is we have now a trusted way to say when a hotel is offering value, when they're selling at their fair price, or they're selling below their fair price, we have a way to indicate that. And this is what, again, at the end, if we have a Q&A, just to get you to challenge that, because it's fairly new in terms of airing this system. So the way this works in action is, and this can work in any one of a number of ways, I'm demoing one here for you at the moment, is I come along as a consumer, all of the hotel rates are in our system, alongside all the expected rates. So we know what that rate is, we know what the rate should be. And again, I'll explain how that works. But the way it's introduced is, we just have a little layer that goes in, that's verified by Rate Advisor, that allows you to click on value for money. And when you click on value for money, it says that this rate is 20% lower than the expected rate of $339. Now, this is staying within that regulatory framework where we do not deviate from the consumer, number one, being protected. But we find a way within that to allow hotels to demonstrate a fair price or to demonstrate value for money that's on offer. And that will have a huge boost on conversion rates online. So to tell you a little bit about how this works, and undoubtedly we'll get into questions about this because it's a very new way to look at it. Every hotel, if I look at a market like London, for example, and you ask, how on earth could you say that this double room, on a room-only basis, non-refundable, at that hotel, should cost this amount on that night? Where does that expected price come from? Because it's the expected price becomes our anchor. The way in retail, our 28-day price is our anchor for talking about value and discounts. So what this does, what the algorithm does, is it looks at a market, and it recognizes that if I, as a consumer, if I want to come to London, intuitively as a consumer, I understand that if it's London Fashion Show, or if it's Chelsea Flower Show, or if Wimbledon is on, or if the Independent Hotel Show is on, I know I'm going to pay a little bit more for the room because I'm going to the city when the city is busy. Okay? We all get that. If I'm booking the last seat on an aircraft, you know you're going to pay the most for it. Whereas if you're first in when the seats go on sale, you're going to get a deal. So if I look at London on a future date, and I see that London's occupancy is, let's say, 80%. So it's 80% sold on that date. The expected price of every hotel would be the price that that hotel is selling at when that hotel is at 80% occupancy. I'm paying what you would expect to pay for the market that I want to visit. But when I look at the London occupancy, the distribution of sold rooms is really uneven. So when London is 80% sold, some hotels are 95% sold, and they're selling at rack rate. But other hotels are at 65% occupancy, and they've reduced their rate to stimulate demand, because that's what revenue management systems do. And I should say, if there is anyone in the audience, any hotelier that is using fixed price, because I do work with a few where they might move their prices per season, it's equally as effective, and the opportunities afforded by this new standard are equally for those hotels, because even though you're not moving your rate, the alternative hotels that the consumer is trying to choose from is moving their rate. So your price relative to the value that's on offer does change. So it's equally as applicable. So what we do is we bake all of this into an algorithm such that anytime a consumer goes to look at a hotel, if that hotel is selling at a fair price, in other words, in and around where they should be, we can give them a way to say to the consumer, this is at its expected price. So it goes back to that Daniel Kahneman riskless choice. You immediately give the consumer confidence to make the booking. If the hotel is selling below that rate, so if they're behind the curve on occupancy for that night, you're now able to say this is hotel, or this price is lower than its expected rate. So when we talk about value for money with hotels, a huge amount of that is subjective. Okay, you look at a hotel, and a hotel that might be fantastic value for money for me, subjectively, is its location. It has a business center, it has a gym, has a great restaurant, and for somebody else, they're looking at a different set of criteria. I'm putting all of that subjectivity to one side, and I'm just looking at the price. So we want to look at the price for the market that the consumer wants to visit, and say, if you're coming to London, expect to pay this. But for some hotels, you're going to pay over that. We don't do anything in that booking journey. So if the hotel is ahead of where its price should be, nothing happens. The booking journey is as it is today. But similar to retail, putting a sticker on something, we can now do that in the booking process. We can say this room is actually at its fair price or it's below its fair price. So you're getting a deal. We can also give you that data, so now you can turn that into your marketing. So you can now have your Google AdWords campaign say you've got rates of up to 40% off in October, for example. You're going to get a much higher click-through on your advertising. It's going to bring people, and you're going to get reduced cost per click when you get into the mechanics of how the Google Ads auction works. So there's a lot that we can do with this, and the next point, if we have this standard that the industry are behind, the next point to look at is, how does that impact the OTAs? Because the OTAs today are selling to a consumer that doesn't know what value for money looks like, and they can't know. There isn't anywhere they can go to find that out. So let's just look at how the OTAs flourish in that environment. So I did a search for 4-star hotels in London for tonight in preparing this presentation. So I went to booking.com, and I wanted to look at 4-star hotels. At the very top of the list was this property. It's a 4-star hotel. It's got a very good rating of 8.1. It's got thousands of reviews. It's a little over 3 kilometers from the city centre. And I can see that price. So I went page by page by page down through all of those search results. Now, this hotel is at the top because I'm sure some of you will recognize beside the hotel name, you've got the 4 stars, and then you've got the thumbs up, which means that they're part of Booking.com's preferred program. Then you've got the plus, which means they're part of Preferred Plus. So instead of paying the base rate of 15% commission, this hotel is paying 23% commission on every room sale on every night. And what Booking.com in that program tell you is that by investing the additional commission, we'll give you up to 60% increased occupancy. So this hotel, therefore, is at the top of the search results when I search for a 4-star hotel. It has nothing to do with value for money for me. If I go right down towards the end of the search results, I found this hotel. It's another 4-star hotel. It's got a slightly better guest review rating, still based on thousands of reviews. It's around the same distance from the city centre. And on the surface, at least, it looks like a better room type that I'm getting. And you can see there's a huge difference on price. Okay? So the thing to understand about OTAs is that when I stumble across these rates as I'm scrolling through the results, I had no idea what these hotels were supposed to be. From Booking.com's perspective, they can exploit that because what you turn to in the absence of an understanding of value for money is you're influenced really easily by urgency and scarcity and all of those risk mitigation messages that you see on Booking.com in green that tell you, don't worry about it, you can book this, we're not going to charge you now, you don't have to pay until check-in. So they go ahead and get the booking. What you don't realize necessarily is that if you look at all of the things they do to influence it, and you see they also have this earn credits, so you get some money back on that booking. Even when you take that, so you're paying 23% as that top hotel to Booking.com on a very high rate, as opposed to 15%. Even when Booking.com give that credit, and let's say the consumer was to use that, they're still making 96% more revenue. You can do the calculations on the top hotel than they are on the bottom. It's never going to change with the OTAs. But if you had a pricing standard where the expected rate of both hotels was known, let's say both hotels would be expected to be at 250, the distribution of room sales for those two hotels would be completely different. So one of the ambitions we have with this standard is going through regulation, introduce things that consumers can use, like a Google Chrome plugin that will just pop up there and tell you, if you're using Google Chrome or Safari, as you're looking at Booking.com, what those prices should be. We want to unravel and to take away those advantages that Booking.com have that are baked from a commission standpoint, are baked into this layer of there's only one room left, there's 10 people looking right now, the last one was booked 5 minutes ago, prices in London are going up on your date, but don't worry, you can book that now, you don't have to pay, you don't have to pay until you arrive. We're going to give you £23 credit. That doesn't work if we can make value for money clear. It really takes that core algorithm that Booking.com have been using, which is determined by the amount of money they make per page view of a hotel. It takes that and turns it on its head. Because Booking.com can't flip to value. The write-down in revenue is simply too large. The last point that I'll make is, in a dynamic pricing environment, we spend a lot of time, I'm sure some of you do, looking at competitor rates. Maybe you've subscribed to rate shopping tools, where every morning you'll get an email and it'll show you the next 30 or 90 days of competitor prices. And one of the things we've found in this project is that when hotels are moving rates all the time, and when consumers are considering hotels that are way outside of your comp set, you cannot look at your competitiveness on price. So as impossible as it is for a consumer to go online and determine whether something is value for money or not, it's equally as impossible for hotels to say, I'm very competitive on price that night. Because everybody is moving their rates, and you don't know who the consumer is looking at. Most hotels will only look at their comp set of maybe 10 hotels, and you get a report on that. The minute the consumer starts looking beyond that, where are you on price? You'll have hotels that are in your aspirational comp set, that may be on average £100 more expensive per night, but they're behind the curve on occupancy, so they're at your price point on that night. You're not looking at them, but they're going to eat your lunch on that night. Or you've got a similar style hotel, but it's not in your neighborhood. The consumer is not fussy about the exact location because they're going to be here for a few days and see everything anyway. They want a style of hotel. So again, there's a lot in that. So I'm going to leave where we're at that and see if you have any questions and answers. It's a very new topic. It's a very new standard. We're hoping it's going to be very disruptive. It needs the industry behind it, and it needs it to be challenged and kicked around as much as it can be. So I'll turn it to Q&A and just ask if anybody has any questions.
Hi there. Very interesting, and so much of what you've said is I agree with completely. Now, we have a very niche property on the Isle of Wight. There are no other hotels around us, although we're not a hotel, would be considered a retreat, a bed and breakfast retreat. It's a completely new and novel concept in terms of what we're doing. So your analysis of what a hotel is worth, maybe you want to talk to that a little bit in terms of how you are defining the criteria, like where you said, okay, 4-star hotel, Central London, 250. What's that based on? And then where do the niche products fit in, where you're so much more than a hotel room?
So I think there's two parts. If I understand the question, I think there's two parts to the question. So let me deal with the second part first, because it's easier to answer. You've got a unique property that's not comparable with anything else, and it sounds like it's a destination property that we'll go to. And the price point around that is because you don't have a market that you're selling and directly competing with. What you need to do is to look at, and we've worked with hotels. I'll give you a very good example. I worked with a hotel called Dromoland Castle. It was one of my first ever clients. Dromoland Castle is quite unique. It certainly doesn't compete with the hotels that are in its neighbourhood. What you find is that the majority of its audience are American. They fly into the local airport, and then they're either going to drive north or south. And they do have competitors about an hour in each direction. And when you look at the mix, when you look at traveller behaviour, that's what they're doing. So what you have to do to be able to use that standard properly is look at where would consumers book. So if you genuinely don't have an alternative, if the purpose of the stay is it's a destination, if the product is so unique that it's not comparable with anything in the immediate vicinity, then you have to look at what are the alternatives. Because what we're trying to do with this is this can be turned on immediately in a city. So in a city, we can look at everything around that age. And we can also look at neighbourhoods within the city. And we can crunch neighbourhoods on value for money in the same way as we would crunch hotels. So we can say, okay, if you're coming to London on these dates, then staying in Notting Hill is really good value on those dates. Whereas if you come in the following weekend, it's crazy busy, you're going to pay an awful lot more. So if the customer doesn't need to be in that destination, then they can take that value for money influence. So I think what you would need to do in your scenario is to build out, you will be, for us, the second tier of hotels, where the market is less defined, but it comes down to studying, when we have a big data set, what are other consumers looking at? A good place to start would be do you sell through OTAs, through Booking.com? The next time you meet with your Booking.com account manager, if you ask your account manager to tell you, I don't think they'll commit it to writing, but if you ask them to tell you, when someone looks at my property on Booking.com, but they don't book me, where do they book? And that is your true comp set. So Booking.com's audience for your area is big enough, and I would expect that it is, the Isle of Wight, then I think that's a very good place to start and say, because what we can do is we can look at the total market, and we will have to build it in layers. We would look at your price relative to the total market and then to that comp set of comparable hotels by property type, by destination, if it's very experiential, trying to map that and then give it. So it's not an off-the-shelf solution as much as a property in London is, because you have the density of hotels. But I think that's how you would go about it. Does that? Yeah? Okay. Peter.
Could you explain, Brian, what is the cost involved if a hotel wishes to take advantage of Rate Advisor?
Yes. So what we're doing at the moment, Peter, is we are partnering with the booking engine companies. So this is a technology that's going to sit within the booking engine. So I suppose the first point is that we're not selling directly to hotels. So we're crunching this. We're going to give it to booking engines to give to their clients. The price point for what we've just looked at, there's more to it than what I've just shown you. It does a few other things. But that price point is in the region of £60 per month. That's what you'll pay as a license fee for that widget. So if you want to think of it as Marks and Spencer's going to get their box of stickers to be able to say we have value, we have discounts, it is that ability to be able to flag it in the booking process. So we've priced it in such a way that the incrementality of sales, by offering that discount from a trusted source, will pay for itself multiple times over. And that the second phase, Peter, will be giving you a plug into that data, or giving your digital marketing agency a plug into that data, so they can then connect that with AdWords. So you're dynamically injecting that copy into your ads to say, we've got, and the system will calculate for the month of October what the deepest discount is. We've got 40% off in October on selected dates. And then a landing page in the booking engine that goes with that shows those discounted dates. So there's various pieces to it, but the price point is really low. And the reason we've put it so low is that we see this as being universal. There is no way to do it at the moment. We see it as being applicable to virtually all hotels. So we think from a business perspective, it's commercially feasible at a very low price point across very many hotels. Does that answer the? Cheers. Thank you. Any other?
Which booking engines do you currently work with?
So we're rolling out. So the first test hotel is with Amadeus, and then we've spoken to 4 others. And what we're going to do is we're going to take it in order of size. So the hotel chains, we're working with the hotel chains independently because they have mostly proprietary systems. And then Amadeus will be the first. But all booking engines, as I said, today was the first talk about this. So the pack that's going to the booking engines will be finalized next week, and it'll be sent out to everyone else. In the booking engine integration, it's the way Google Tag Manager is very light. It doesn't mean that there's an extra project for the booking engine to embark on. So we're just plugging in. We're just looking at the triggers on GTM, and that fires our widget.
And just another question. If you're actually priced high in the market, does it just not display?
Yes, exactly. So it will be similar to, again, it's an awful analogy, but taking that sticker that a retailer will use to say the money off, they don't use any kind of sticker when the price is a little bit ahead of where it would normally be. So no, it only gets invoked when you have a fair price, or it's good value because it's discounted or below what the expected price would be.